Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Posa is a community partner specialist for the program, and he's here with us throughout the series. And John, I understand today we have a very important guest from Harrisburg.
Yes, we do, Joe. I'm pleased to welcome Pedro Rivera, who is the new Secretary of Education for Pennsylvania. Secretary Rivera brings extensive experience in public education to his role as a member of Governor Wolf's cabinet, and he has spent his entire career helping students. Before coming to Harrisburg, Secretary Rivera was the superintendent of the School District of Lancaster, where he was for 7 years. And under his leadership, the School District of Lancaster developed and implemented a new curriculum, an aggressive professional development plan, and an innovative teacher observation tool, or several of them actually. And the initiatives resulted in increased graduation rates, notable improvements in math, science, and writing proficiency scores, and enhancing the level of participation from high-performing students in programs that help prepare them for college and other postgraduate opportunities. Welcome to the program, Secretary.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here, John and Joe.
Well,
hope all is going well on your end.
Oh, everything is going well. And of course, you know our program is about quality early learning, which is our main focus. We're going to talk about a number of things in education with you, but just from your own personal perspective, give us a little bit of your sense and your take on how important quality early learning is in terms of preparing a student for success academically in school and later in life.
Absolutely. Having lived and grown up and served and been an educator and a community leader and member of a community in an urban environment and a very, very, very low socioeconomic or very poor community, I've been able to witness, experience firsthand the importance of early learning and really the difference, just the tangible difference you can observe, you can feel, you can see in students who have participated in a high-quality early learning program or those who have been exposed and have experienced early learning to those who have not. And I think one of the most the simple statistic that we hear often and over and over and over again is knowing that a student who's not gone to an early childhood program, a quality early childhood program from a lower socioeconomic family, may hear upwards of 3 million fewer words through their early elementary school years than a child from either a higher socioeconomic family or community or one who's gone through an early childhood program. And an article I read recently really hit home, where it shared that a student from a higher socioeconomic family or community or one who's participated in a high-quality program has a higher or greater vocabulary than many parents from lower socioeconomic communities or those who are not exposed to the same opportunities. So, when you take away the numbers and you strip it all down and you just kind of hear it in a qualitative way, it really hits home and really, brings home the value and the need for high-quality early learning opportunities.
Of course, you came in to office in a very challenging time, very challenging environment, especially since we are in the middle of this ongoing state budget impasse. But at the same time, we are looking at programs like Head Start and Pennsylvania Pre-K Counts, early intervention, programs that have proven to have such tremendous improvements in helping our kids. And yet, there's funding that's attached to those programs. So give us some sort of take on how you are dealing with this issue in terms of being a cabinet member and yet still having to rely on the legislature to approve the budget specifically for education.
So it's absolutely, you're right. I mean, especially as we're rounding out, or actually now we've already rounded out September and we're into October. There are lots of conversations taking place. There's some frustration, but also some glimmers of hope at some points in time as well. First, I think one of the opportunities, or what I am hopeful of, even through the difficult discussions and conversations, Governor Wolf has still maintained his commitment to education, but specifically to early learning, to early childhood education. I mean, here, we have a governor who has shared that, first and foremost, he wants to make $120 million investment in pre-K programs, in pre-K counts, and Head Start. He wants to, which will allow, upwards of 14,000 additional slots. And he didn't stop there. I mean, he shared that this is the first year of 4 years of investments he'd like to make in our early childhood programs. So I think, although the temperature here is a little cooler to colder than it is elsewhere, the attitude of the culture can sometimes be volatile. But at the same time, we still have members of the legislature, members of the administration, members on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate, that are staunch supporters of education and specifically early childhood ed. So even within all of this, turmoil, all of this drama, there are still opportunities for us to have good, rich dialogue in a real promising way.
Your background is in urban school districts. Du Bois is a small city, but we are within a larger, very rural area. Do you feel there are commonalities between the problems faced regarding early childhood learning and education in general between urban and rural districts, and if so, what are they?
Oh, absolutely. One of the opportunities that I have had, over the past 8 months, has been to visit school districts across and with superintendents, teachers, and administrators across the Commonwealth. From as far northwest as we can go to low southeast as we can visit. And I can share with you that there are many commonalities between urban and rural districts. So first, as an educator, as a teacher, one of the first skills we learn and really hone in and engage in is differentiation towards children. I mean, one of the things, if you're a parent or an educator, no two children are alike. And that couldn't be more true than when you're visiting an urban or a rural school district. So, first and foremost, the need and the skill to really focus on the needs of individual children. Some of what we've learned, especially when visiting our rural communities, is that the school really is not only just the place where students are educated, it's the place where students, eat, most of their meals throughout the course of the year. It's a place where their students and families are connected to social services. It's the one constant in the lives of the family and the lives of the student. So schools in our rural and our urban communities are much more than just what we remember as being the traditional school. They're the hub of our communities. And when you're looking at communities that rural communities that are very vast in terms of geographic location, and students unfortunately have to travel by bus upwards of 30, 45, and in some cases almost an hour. We realize the need to really take advantage of the time while students are in school is especially important, because once they go home, they don't have access to the same skills, to the same resources, to the same tools that they have in the classroom. So the need to maximize support of students and families while they're in school. Second, the need to differentiate around the specific needs of students. And lastly, the need to understand and realize that education anymore is really about focusing on the whole child, from head to toe.
And of course, that involvement of the family and the parent is so critical, especially, it's such a component of both the Head Start and the pre-K counts programs. And obviously, in terms of the budget, it's making sure children that live in those more rural areas that don't currently have access to those programs, making sure there are enough slots to serve those children.
Absolutely, and so think of the three of us, who have, are exposed to so many different things throughout the day, and we meet so many different people, and not a day goes by that we don't meet someone that provides an aha moment, right? So how often do you say in a day, "Oh, I didn't know that," or "I didn't know that existed"? Oh, there's a resource I should really follow up on or take advantage of. So that's us in our roles and where we're exposed to many different people. Can you imagine in a rural community or urban communities where parents may not have access to those resources? So when they come into their child's early childhood center, when they walk into their child's classroom, and there's a dedicated professional there to connect them to resources, information, strategies, supports, that means the world. To a family specifically, and especially a family in need.
You just mentioned focusing on the whole child, and you advocate a holistic approach to childhood education going beyond the classroom. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. When you look at, first some of the work that, the governor is really, driving us to think about and to do, and some of the work that we've already started in the Department of Education, starting with how we assess schools. We're looking to really take a much more comprehensive approach to how we assess programs, schools, and school districts. So to not just focus so heavily on test scores or standardized test scores, but looking at the programs and opportunities and skill sets that students need to be successful. And if we focus on measuring those benchmarks, schools and programs and teachers are really going to continue to focus on what matters most for children. Secondly, when you look at what we've been, some great examples out there that I've visited, where schools and programs are connecting to community schools, services and programs, both with the Department of Education and the Department of Human Services and the Department of Health. So we visited an early childhood center that had a community dental clinic associated with it, that had mental health providers in the building, that had physical health providers in the building. And so, you think of not only were the students learning, the basic, skills of math, reading, and social sciences and the like, but students were receiving medical support, were receiving mental health support, were receiving, the support needed to not only be good students, but to be healthy children.
Can I ask where that is?
So we visited. So one of the schools we visited was here in Harrisburg, which was a great visit. We also visited a school in Lancaster, and I think we have a number of other schools in the northern part of the state, which are engaging in the same programs. And while at the same time, we're going to be visiting with the Secretary of Agriculture. Russell Redding. We're going to be visiting even a family garden, a community garden, just to really engage in the farm to school initiative that's taking place. So when you think of what schools do today, I mean, it's everything from education to nutrition to to health to wellness. So schools and the opportunities we have to serve communities is vast.
Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. We talked about testing and specifically in addressing assessment testing. Of course, in making sure that schools are going to be following Common Core standards and now and into the future. This, of course, is the first year that the PSSA assessment tests incorporated the Common Core standards. And although this was not really surprising, we did see a drop of 31% overall statewide in the scores for math on that test and 9-point drops in English. The understanding is that was going to be expected the first time around, but how can school districts, how should they prepare their students for this change in the assessment testing? And beyond that, how do we get around the teaching to the test kind of theory?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. So first, this is not the first year of the adoption of the core standards, but this is the first year we fully assessed or aligned our assessment to the new Pennsylvania core standards. And, and I always like to take a quick moment and explain that standards are a good thing. I mean, we establish standards every day in our lives. I mean, we know, what we want to accomplish on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. And then we create a plan, to meet those goals. And standards should be looked at exactly the same way. It's what we want students to learn, the skills we want students to learn in each and every school district, each and every school across the Commonwealth. So whether you're in a rural school district or you're in an urban school district or a suburban school district, whether you're in a wealthy school district or a poor school district, we want to make sure that every student who's participating in a math, program, a math class, is learning the skills. We don't get into the content with the standards, but learning the skills that are needed, to be successful after high school. Every student in a language arts class is doing the same, and science classes are doing the same. So standards help do that. However, I will tell you, when we look at, especially, I think this, nationally, and what we've done, in the state as well, we've placed too heavy a reliance on standardized tests. If you only measure one assessment, if you only measure one aspect of anything we do, whether it's teaching and learning, or fitness, all you're going to focus in on is what's being assessed, what's being measured. So, one of the areas that the governor has really been driving and helping us, lead an initiative towards is taking a much more holistic approach to assess to school, accountability, to school improvement. So not only focusing on standardized tests, but also, many of the other great things that good schools engage in, whether it's, attendance, whether it's high quality programs, whether it's, high quality teachers and instruction. So when we focus on those many different areas, it's going to change that culture around teaching to the test. You know what's created that culture of teaching to the test? The fact that we only measure the test. So once you start to measure holistically, schools will start focusing holistically as well. And even when we look at early childhood programs, one of the areas that we're really engaging and aligning to is ensuring that we not only have good, high-quality early childhood programs, but that our early childhood programs are aligned to kindergarten readiness standards. So it's not early childhood for early childhood's sake. It's early childhood, good, high-quality early childhood programs to the end that we prepared students to be successful when they enter the traditional K-12 system.
So much of this goes back to the local district, and it seems that so many school boards made up primarily of private citizens seem to be, anyhow, more intent on cutting costs than growing education. So they're kind of flying in the face of what you're trying to do. How do you deal with that?
It's reminding folks of some common sense, strategies we all know in our personal, in our private and on our public lives. First, there's a difference between, slashing and cutting and looking at areas for as an investment. So, we know when resources become limited, when finances become strained, it's easy to want to walk into, a boardroom if you're on a school board, or walk into a school if you're an administrator, or walk into your home if you're the head of your household, and just to start, cutting costs and, cutting, and cutting, cutting to make ends meet, so to speak, financially. But, at some point you have to take a step back and differentiate between what's an investment and what, what could you cut now that actually makes sense moving forward, and what could be cut now could potentially be detrimental to the future of your family, your school, or your community. And when we start to take a look at education as what it is, and that's an investment, not only in our children but in our communities, we're going to understand, and many communities already have, some are still working towards understanding, that if we cut irresponsibly now, it's going to cost us much more money remediating in the future. I mean, here's a great example. I mean, research shows, and it's very specific, business leaders know this, the military knows this, community leaders know, that every dollar invested in early childhood education brings a $7 return to communities. We know that students who graduate with a high school diploma have a greater likelihood of being employed than students who drop out. And students with, a industry certificate or a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree will earn a much greater wage than students who are not skilled, or than adults that are not skilled. Well, guess employees or community members who aren't skilled aren't contributing and giving back to the community at the same rate as those who are skilled and degreed. So, we have to get back to the basics and understand that education is an investment in our community, an investment in our future. And if we just take a look at it as a cost and cut and slash and make irresponsible decisions, it's going to cost our society a lot more in the long run.
Yes, and speaking of the economics of school funding, there is a way that subsidy levels are addressed in terms of how much money is used on the state level to help subsidize education costs in local school districts. Is that method still going to be in place, or is that being looked at a little bit more with scrutiny in terms of the fairness for funding that goes to the more smaller, the local school districts?
So that's a great question. I think one of the areas that an example of government that works, or an example of great government, actually that I was able to participate in on a few different levels, happened very recently, and that was the formation and the culmination of the Basic Education Funding Commission. The commission was made up of representatives from both parties, from Democrat and Republican, from both the House and the Senate, members of our administration and the previous administration. And I'll tell you, and this is sometimes comes as a shock when I share this, but they were engaged in great work. There was support across the board. There was agreement. And there's a recommendation for a basic education funding formula that's progressive. That is probably one of the most comprehensive, in the United States. So we're going from being one of 3 states that has no funding formula to having one of the most thoughtful and comprehensive funding formulas once approved, by the legislature and sent on to the governor, in the United States. And so that's an example of how like minds or folks can come to the table and make recommendations and really engage the community in a process that best serves their community. And this funding formula will take into account poverty, both the individual poverty of students and families and concentrated poverty. It will take student population into account. It will take needs like English language learners into account. It will take tax effort into account. And really, what it does is establishes a formula to ensure that we have an equitable means of funding schools and not necessarily this means of just kind of throwing funding out there as it always had in the past. So, I'm very hopeful that once, that's approved and we can, start to build momentum and consensus around that, the Commonwealth residents, our members of our community are going to see a really good example of what happens when government works together.
Secretary Rivera, our time has flown. We covered a lot of topics, and I thank you so much. And hopefully we can come together and get a budget that we can all be happy with, that will fund education, because we all know that it's a priority for us all. So thank you so much for being on the program.
Oh, thank you both, gentlemen, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Poza and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.